Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, the place where high-performing men are empowered to reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness while enhancing their career success. You see, in a world full of noise, burnout, and mediocrity, we believe what's missing is courageous and compassionate leadership in the home, because when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. You see, this isn't just a podcast. It's a movement of men who refuse to settle for less in our families, our focus, and our future. We are curse breakers and we are legacy makers. And I'm your host, Mitchell Osman, and I'm honored that you have chosen to invest your most valuable asset, which is your time with me today. Now let's get into it. All right, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, and I just want to say today's going to be a special episode. I mean, I say that often, but I tell you what, today is special because this is the second time I've had a family member on the show. First time was my wife. Interesting thing. The second time is now Sean, which is my brother-in-law, brother of my wife. And now this is going to be a powerful conversation because Sean is going to be talking to us about his journey with cancer and his whole the awareness and the process and what he's learned from it. And he's going to share with he's an ambassador for Movember, which we'll get into. But I know there's probably a high likelihood that you guys don't know who my brother-in-law is. So let me read his bio because I think he's a fascinating guy. But here's a little bit about him. He leads the M&A and corporate venturing team at a globally recognized sports brand, and is based in Germany. And in this role, he has been responsible for managing both multi-billion-dollar M&A projects as well as investments in early-stage startups across a wide range of innovation fields, from 3D printing to AI and beyond. Now, previously, Sean was an investment banker working for one of Canada's largest banks. He was born in Canada and also lived in Spain and the U.S. prior to relocating to Germany in 2016. Now, Sean is a travel junkie and has visited nearly 80 countries across 6 continents. And recently, Sean became a community ambassador for the Movember Foundation, which I mentioned in the beginning. And he's acting as an advocate for proactive approaches to men's health, a topic very close to his heart, after having been diagnosed with testicular cancer in 2024, which is what we're going to get into today. He is the author of the blog Limeade, which you can check out at limeade.blog, which recounts his entire journey with cancer. Sean Porta, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks very much for having me, Mitch. Good to be on. And I don't know how many of your guests you actually call brother, but in this case,
Literally.
It's true, right? It's quite literal. And you read off quite a lengthy bio there, but for sure, number one at the top of that list of accomplishments was you marrying into my family and being my brother-in-law, right?
I like it. I like the shout out. You know what? Maybe I'll have you back. I might have you back just for that. Well, listen, man, I want to jump into it because dude, you guys such a wild story, and I'll never forget, when I heard about the diagnosis and the months leading up to it. You were preparing to get married, and just the timing of it all was crazy. So would you take us back to that moment that you first heard those words, "You have cancer"? What was going through your mind, especially as someone who has always taken his health seriously, taking your fitness seriously? What were some of the first things going through your mind when you heard that?
I mean, obviously total disbelief, right? I was 35 years old at the time. I'm now 36. And it was at a time in my life, you already mentioned, kind of one of the big sort of like life milestones that was very near term on the calendar, which was getting married, like 2024. So, which is when the diagnosis happened. 2024 was supposed to be the best year ever, right? Was supposed to get married. We're supposed to go traveling. My wife and I were going to take, my now wife and I were going to take a 3-month sabbatical and go travel the world and take a break from work and use that as kind of an extended honeymoon. And so there was all of this like excitement about, and then we were going to start, and I should say, then we were going to start trying to have a family, right? So 2024, best year ever, huge kind of like turning point or whatever you want to call it. And so to have all of that effectively, taken away from you, or at least at that point in time, a huge degree of uncertainty as to what my life was gonna look like and what that diagnosis meant. Um, yeah, I don't know, there's no other way to put it, but it took my breath away, right?
Mm.
And it was totally jarring. I mean, I'm somebody who is very, very lucky that not very many bad things have happened to me in my life. You know it. Our family, I had amazing parents. I had an amazing sister. I grew up very middle class in a safe place in Canada with, I had every opportunity, and things generally went pretty well for me. This was the first time that something this monumental and this, I don't know if you want to call it negative, but this life-changing had happened to me. So yeah, it was a huge bit of news and a huge curveball in a very important year of my life. So
Yeah, yeah. I'll actually. I mean, you got married in Portugal, and we all went there, and I officiated. I had the pleasure of officiating the wedding, and there was a particular moment, that really stands out to me. I would say a sobering, sort of visceral moment, as I was standing in front of you, and Joe, and you guys were reading your vows, and you talked about, the hope of planning a family, the hope of having a family one day, and there was this man, like a heavy sort of an anticipation, but a caution, like, you know what I mean? There was this, we don't know what the future holds, but this is what we're really hoping for and believing for. And it was just such a raw moment. Okay, so you walked us through, those things that you heard and that moment, but let's take it back a step even more. Like, let's go back to how you even found out, because I know that a lot of guys, we don't necessarily know. We don't find out until it's too late. It's an accident or something like that. But tell me, man, what on your journey, what actually caused you to find out that something was going on in order to go to the doctor and get the assessment?
kind of one of the first questions that I normally get about this whole cancer journey is, well, how did you find it? That's what most men want to understand, right? Because they want to understand, okay, how can I make sure that this doesn't happen to me? And I would love to be able to tell you that the way that I found it was by following the instructions of organizations like Movember or, my doctor or whomever, and regularly inspecting myself, knowing my body, and catching something very early on, and then, acting on it. But that's absolutely not the case, right? I never, even though, and we'll get to what Movember is all about, even though I had supported the organization in the past, grown a mustache a number of times, what I guess I call a mustache. I'd grown one, a number of times. I still never followed the advice. I wouldn't, the most sort of natural place to check out those parts of your body is in the shower. I never did that, to be honest, never. And the only reason that I realistically, I mean, I guess at some point I would have found it, but the reason that I found it was because of a total accident, a coincidence. It was a sports injury. I was at the gym. Uh, I hurt myself in that area of my body. I don't know if I can say this on the podcast. I nutted myself, right? It was extremely painful. That part of my body was quite swollen for a little while. And only as a result of that was I paying more attention to that part of my body and sort of noticed something. And even at that point, I put it off, right? I said, well, it's just a sports injury. It's going to be fine. It's going to go away. And I just kept putting it off. And to be honest, it was probably a combination of my wife pushing me to go and get it checked out, and also the fact that we had this wedding and this huge honeymoon trip on the very near horizon, where I was like, maybe I should go and see a doctor just to make sure that I get whatever small thing that this is dealt with before we leave, right? So all I can say is, like, what I'm about to tell people in terms of like being more proactive is not something that didn't come natural to me. It's not that I can speak from experience that, I'm some saint when it comes to being proactive about my health. But I think that's the point, right? I think most men are like that, right? We are, I don't know if it's, there's a programming sense into us. Part of that is probably cultural and has to do with, sort of what a traditional view of masculinity is, which is to, sort of like grit your teeth, bear through anything, be very stoic, and not ask for help, right? And not seek help so easily. And I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not a psychologist, right? But I don't know the ins and outs of exactly why I put this off, or why I put off most health topics in my life. But all I could say is, of course, hindsight is 2020, and I don't blame myself for anything like that. But if I had been a bit more proactive, I probably could have saved myself, the a lot of pain, both mentally and physically. Also for my wife, right? We may not have had to go through that chemotherapy journey. The cancer may not have spread as much as it did. The surgery may have been enough, So, yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I think men are not programmed that way. Probably one of the reasons is, sort of like how we view masculinity, and that I am the perfect example of that, let's say.
Hey, brother, if you are listening to this show, you've most likely built a successful career. You handle pressure, you lead teams, and you get results. But when was the last time you really connected with your wife beyond the calendar, the kids, and the to-do list? Well, if that sounds like you, I have a free gift for you today called the Connection Code. Which are 50 questions to break the silence, spark the fun, and bring the fire back. These questions are going to help you learn what she truly desires from you, to break out of the routine and to rediscover fun, and to spark deeper passion and connection without forcing awkward conversations. Listen, most men assume their wives feel loved, but the best husbands ask great questions and keep the connection alive. So if your date nights feel more like board meetings, and if you've gone from soulmates to roommates, and I want you to download this connection code for free and start the kind of conversations that bring you closer tonight. You can grab your copy at dadnationcode.com/code, or hit the link in the show notes below. All right, let's get back into it. And I was thinking, you chose to, you got this diagnosis before your wedding, but you chose to wait until after the wedding to begin the chemo treatment. And I was kind of thinking about that as we were talking about it during that time. But I was curious, man, what drove that decision to wait till after, and how did you and your wife navigate that season that you started that treatment?
Yeah. Well, I guess, first thing I should say is it's not that I, totally negated the advice of my doctor, right? Of course, healthcare professionals know best. But what we made very clear to them, when we were starting to plan for the chemo treatment, which came, and I'm not sure how much you want to get into the sort of like the timeline of events later in the show, but I had already had surgery. Right. And unfortunately, the surgery was not enough because the cancer had spread into other parts of my body. And so it was clear that I needed to undergo chemo. And there was this very uncertain period of a few weeks, which were also the few weeks leading up to the wedding, where we didn't know if the rate of spread of the cancer within my body was going to skyrocket and mean that there was absolutely no way that my doctors were going to let me, or at least advise me to leave the country to go and get married. But thankfully, sort of that rate of spread was manageable. And, together with my doctors, we made the decision that it was probably safe and there wasn't a significant additional risk for me to go and get married and take a week and a half to sort of go and obviously follow through with this very momentous occasion, of which I'm very grateful that you were a part of that. And I think, that was really driven by, I guess, how important that few days was to us, right? It was something that we had a relatively long engagement. I think it was, over 2 years that we were engaged. We had been, we had found the perfect venue. We had because neither of us are from Portugal. As you know, I'm from Canada. My wife's from the UK. We live in Germany. We had, you know, all of the most important people in our life were flying from all across the world, to be with us that weekend. And we just thought, like, this is already a very, very difficult moment in our lives, going through this, through this cancer journey. If we have, if we have to cancel our wedding, like there's from a mental, from an emotional, from a, you know, from that kind of perspective, like it's pretty difficult to come back from that, right? We had already canceled our honeymoon, right? Like I mentioned that we were going to go on this extended honeymoon, go on this sabbatical to travel the world, and we had already gone through the heartbreak of knowing and accepting, I guess. Maybe we hadn't accepted by that point, but knowing that that was off the cards, right? So I think, yeah, it was just such an important weekend for us to keep intact. And I have to say that even though obviously I would, if I could, rewind the clock, or if I had a magic wand, I wouldn't have ever gotten cancer, necessarily. But like you were there, right? It had an amazing transformational effect on the weekend, right? Everybody was super present. It was very, very emotional. We all sort of knew what was ahead of me in terms of the chemotherapy treatment, and that life wasn't going to be particularly fun for the few months afterwards, and then and who knows beyond, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of uncertainty, but then as a result, a lot of people really living in the moment, and sort of being there just 100%, in support of us, and the celebration of our love, and everything like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. There was something about the uncertainty of the future that really drew everyone to be so much more present. Man, for me too, like I found myself reflecting on my future, and how present I am being, and how much I'm making the most of every moment in my marriage, because of knowing what you guys were facing. Let's move forward to like the situation where, okay, you had a surgery before the wedding, it wasn't successful, you got married, now you're in the middle of treatment, you're doing the chemotherapy. What was the hardest mental battle for you during that whole time?
oof. I mean, I think just not knowing what my body was going to be capable of on any given day, right? So, my body or my mind, let's put it that way, right? So, I didn't know, and I started to sort of like understand what a chemotherapy cycle for me looked like over time. But of course, like the first time that I received, a drip, that I received these horrible chemicals that, of course, do an amazing thing in terms of treating the cancer in your body, but just wreak havoc on the rest of you. Of course, nobody prepares you for these kinds of things, right? You can kind of read a little bit online about what people feel, but everybody, has a bit of a different experience. And I think just not really knowing, not being able to have a firm grounding of what each day was going to look like. Was I going to be able to go for a walk? Did I even have the mental power to watch Netflix that day? There were some days that were really, really difficult. And I think just not being able to, like calibrate what things were going to look like was really difficult for me. And then I guess as well, I don't know, maybe sometimes I set too high of expectations for myself as to what I was going to be capable of. I would
Yeah.
sort of say like, well, based on the last cycle, at this point in time, roughly, maybe I could go for like a short jog, right? Clear my head, get some fresh air, um, get a bit of exercise, and do something that made me feel a bit more normal. But then I'd wake up and I just feel like garbage, right? And that was heartbreaking, right? Like
Mhm.
I've heard this quote before that the gap between expectations and reality is suffering, right?
Mm.
And and those were really difficult moments when reality was just totally different than my expectations. Um, and I suffered for sure mentally, uh, not understanding why my body wasn't where I wanted it to be, or my mind where I wanted it to be.
Yeah, because technically you did all the right things. Super
Yeah.
active, always been in great shape. Always concerned. About the fitness piece. You were healthy. You were young. Like you said, you grew up and things were relatively easy. You had no sort of big physical, adversity. And I think it would probably be very difficult to the mental battle of like, well, hey, I checked all the boxes. I did all the right things. Why me? I'm not obese. I haven't been living this crazy unhealthy lifestyle, all those different things. But, you know, yeah, that
You
makes
know,
makes total sense.
to be honest though, like I never had, at least it wasn't like a strong, persistent feeling that like this is totally unfair. Why me? Do you
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah.
And I don't want this to sound at all like, I don't know, like heroic or anything like that. But if anything, I sort of felt like, well, actually, I'm kind of glad that it's me in the sense that no, it's not that I wished cancer on myself or that I would wish it upon anybody, but the sad reality is that a lot of men do contract testicular cancer, right? Especially this is the number one cancer that young men get, right? And I sort of thought to myself, I tried to put it in perspective and say like, well, hey, it sucks that you got this. And to your point, I always took care of myself, always ate really well, always exercised, all those kinds of things, right? There was no like environmental reason that I should have got it, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I got it, right? There's no changing that. And thankfully, I live in a country where there is amazing access to healthcare and I have great insurance, right? I have a job where I was totally secure and knew that they would support me, and they did support me through the treatment. I had a family and friends who totally stepped up and made sure that I felt supported and just like assembled this amazing support structure around me. So I was kind of like, well, and there's so many more aspects as to why I'm lucky to be where I am, and that I had all of the tools that I needed to deal with this diagnosis, right? So yeah, as much as it sucked, at least I was in a good position to deal with it, right? I couldn't have asked for much more other than
Yeah.
that magic wand, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love that, man. I mean, you're finding the silver lining, right? And that's we all have a we get to choose how we endure adversity. We get to choose the approach, and how we handle it. And there's something to learn. There's a positive to every negative. And so I just commend you, man, for going into it with that approach. Because you know what, when you say it that way, you're right. You had every tool for success that one could have, going into that journey, which is a great perspective. Talking about that real quick, like because this show is real practical. Guys are tactical. We always want to give, advice and tips and different things like that. But so, for example, when you're walking through this journey, is there any kind of daily habit or mindset thing that helped you keep sort of fighting on that journey? Because as you were saying, you wake up exhausted. You'd just be like, what, you know, are there any things that you did that really kind of helped you mentally, emotionally on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, like obviously the cliche thing to say was to keep that positive mindset, right? But I really do think that that helped. Exercising as much as was possible, and that wasn't possible. So on every single day or at every single part of the, during the chemo treatment. So it's not that I could say that was a daily thing. What I can say was something that I kept going, on a daily basis. I think pretty much every day throughout, the treatment was keeping one thing in my sort of daily routine that has always maybe given me a little bit of a sense of purpose or service, in the sense that I cook dinner every night, right? I mean,
Mm.
when I'm back home, like I
Yeah.
love cooking. It's a big passion of mine. I like putting food on the table. I like delighting my wife with whatever it is that's, sort of popped into my head that day, or whatever. And I sort of said, hey, even though I have every right to order in takeaway or ask my wife, and she of course was offering, as much as she could to take that responsibility over. I said, no, like I need to keep this kind of single sense of purpose and normalcy, and to have a little something to sort of, like, I don't know, contribute. I don't know if contribute is the right way to put it. But like I said, that kind of like sense of purpose every day, which was, okay, no matter how brutal I feel, I'm still going to get in that kitchen for half an hour or an hour or whatever. I'm going to put something interesting on the table that we both want to eat. Right. So, yeah. And it was kind of like a nice, double positive, in the sense that it also meant that we could be very intentional with nutrition, and making sure that what we were putting in our bodies would also help with the fight that I was going through from a physical perspective, and taking all these chemicals in that were horrible for me. At least we could kind of control, also, from a nutrition perspective, and give myself, I guess, an additional helping hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that what you're talking about there is so key, because when we face adversity, whether it's, life or death or sickness, it could be anything. We tend to lose sense of normalcy, because any sense of rhythm, any sense of structure goes out the window, and we don't do the things that give us life. We don't do the things that give us a sense of purpose. And that can look different every single season. But in those real dark times, or times of questioning, it is so important to have one or two things that just remind you of, who you are, or the things that you're passionate about, or the things that, bring life into you a little bit, and it's so helpful in those seasons. So good on you, man. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about, okay, so now, you're in remission, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. Proud of you.
Yep.
It's exciting.
Fingers crossed. Let's keep it that way, right?
Yeah. But we know that, well, now you're an ambassador for the Movember Foundation. And as you said earlier in the episode, you've always supported them and all that kind of stuff. But tell us a little bit about the foundation and how we can be more informed, how we can get involved, how we can help, both in the journey of other men, but also in our own journey, to make sure that we are as informed as we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Movember Foundation does a really amazing job of is just creating a conversation around men's health, which is a conversation that most men don't want to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't like talking about these types of things, we don't like being vulnerable, that sort of a thing, right? But I think with something as simple as growing a mustache, which can look cool for some people, for me, it looks pretty horrible, pretty silly, pretty pathetic. You start that conversation. You say, like, dude, what's on your face, right? And then you automatically launch into it, right? And I think what the Movember Foundation stands for is three very basic men's health topics that don't get talked about enough, and they're creating a conversation through this, sort of movement of growing mustaches, right? So the first of those three topics is testicular cancer, right? It's the one that we've been talking about today. And it is the cancer, as I think I said earlier in the podcast, that affects the most young men, right? It's the most common cancer for young men. And so obviously, I'm sure you've got a lot of young men on this podcast. Again, please check yourselves out. There's lots of resources online for you to do this at home, or you can go see a doctor, right? The second other, and let's call it like physical health related topic that Movember focuses on, is prostate cancer, which tends to affect men a little bit later in their life, right? So sort of prostate cancer is testicular cancer is sort of 35 and below as a general rule, but it definitely can trend later than that. And whereas prostate cancer is sort of 45 and above, right? And that's a cancer that affects 1 in 8 men, right? So that is a significant number, right? And again, if we can encourage men to go, and that's one that you can't check that one on your own at home, but if you can go for your annual physical, make sure that the doctor does it properly, and again, catch it early, right? save yourself the trouble of some of the pain that I went through when it came to chemotherapy, if you can. That's a big one. So first one, testicular cancer. Second one, prostate cancer, and the last one is not a physical one, but it's a mental one. It's mental health, right? And it's something I know you're a big proponent of talking about through your podcast and your platform, and something that similar to physical health, most men are not really willing to talk about their mental health as well, right? And it's unfortunate because I think as you know, suicidality, depression, anxiety, all those types of things are, especially when it comes to suicides, extremely prevalent in men, right? I think it's something like 3 out of 4 suicides are men.
Yep.
And, kind of going back to what we talked about before, men are just generally, they struggle to seek help on those types of things, right? So if through doing something, again, as simple and silly as growing a mustache, we can spread some awareness about those three topics, and men's health in general, and being more proactive about both physical and mental health, then I think that's an amazing movement. And of course, Movember is also a charity fundraising organization. When I grow a mustache, I like to ask for donations, and that money goes towards supporting important initiatives that try to tackle and improve outcomes for men across those 3 different areas.
Nice. 1 in every 8. That's crazy, dude. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's no joke.
Yeah. Well, and hey, you know what? Bonus, if you can grow a great mustache, it's a win-win, because you're going to raise money. You're going to get compliments all the time. I mean,
yes, exactly.
I compliment guys with great mustaches all the time.
For some people it works, for me it doesn't. I got a lot of compliments last year, but I had just come out of chemo, so I was also sort of bald, and people probably felt a bit bad for me. So I think this year the compliments are not going to be so generous.
Well, hey man, you got a great head of hair, so
Thank
it's fine.
you. Yeah.
It's fine that you don't have a great mustache.
It came back, thankfully, after the chemo.
It came back with a vengeance. It's good. I love it. Okay. Well, I was just 2 or 3 more questions for you, man, before we wrap it up. But I mean, you've accomplished some pretty incredible things in your career. Even before we hit record, just talking a little bit about your journey professionally. It's just so inspiring, from leading an M&A department at a globally recognized brand, sports brand, and to traveling the world and seeing so many things, and, even just sports, different things you've done. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But now walking through cancer probably would have changed the way you see life in general. So, if you could think back about, all the things that you have observed and the perspective shifts you've had, how has facing cancer changed what matters most to you now? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say, and that's a big question, by the way, is that I think it's really almost forced me to live a bit more day by day, or at least quarter by quarter. And the reason that I'm very specific about saying quarter by quarter is now my wife and I, tend to divide life into these 3-month segments, because that's how often I need to go in and get a checkup from the doctor, right? So that my oncologist, my medical team at the hospital here will run tests every 3 months to make sure, number 1, that the cancer hasn't recurred, that there's, it hasn't come back, and number 2, that the effects of the treatment, that the long-term effects are not having a significant negative effect on me. So we don't tend to look beyond those 3 months ahead, because we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, yes, we book trips and we look forward to things, and we try to have the loose outlines of a plan, but as opposed to in the past, where we just sort of assumed everything was going to work out. If we booked a vacation somewhere, we thought we would, we just took for granted that it was going to happen. We talked earlier about starting a family. We said, okay, Q4 2024, we're going to start a family. So by, I don't know, X number of months later, there'll be a baby. And that's just not how life works, right? Life can throw you curveballs. And I think we try to live as much as we can now, Yeah, and in terms of not taking those types of things for granted, and living a bit more day by day. Yes, making a plan, but understanding things change. We talked a bit before this gap between expectations and reality being suffering, and just managing those expectations a little bit more, right? So I think that's probably the biggest perspective change that I can sort of think on or put my finger on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I mean, we could all use to live. I mean, I think I love the contrast of being fully present in the moment, and looking at your life a quarter at a time. That line from Vin Diesel from I live my life a quarter mile at a time came to my mind. That's not what he's saying. Not quarter mile, quarter at a time. But this vivid picture of like the future as well, which no doubt, you brought into question. And it was like, well, what does my future look like? And that actually caused you to be so much more focused and present to truly appreciate each moment that's in front of you. And that's powerful, man. So, real quick too, we got, over 30,000 monthly listeners. So if you could have, these 30,000 men sitting, one by one and have a conversation with each one of them, what is one encouragement that you would want to give each man? Knowing all your story and everything we've talked about today, what's one encouragement you would want to give them today? Hey, can I ask you something real quick? If this show has helped you out in any way, if you've gotten any value, clarity, or even just one gut check moment that's made you a better man, husband, or father, would you take 60 seconds and leave us an honest rating or review? And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a drop. And if you really want to pay it forward, share this episode with a friend. Why? Because we know that there are millions of men out there silently struggling in their marriage, in their health, and in their mindset. Men who maybe were where you were just a few steps ago, feeling tired, stuck, and searching for answers. Finding this podcast might be the thing that changes everything for them. So thank you for being part of this movement and for helping more men become the husbands and fathers their families so desperately need. Now let's get back to the show. What is one encouragement that you would want to give each man? Knowing all your story and everything we've talked about today, what's one encouragement you would want to give them today?
Can I make it 4? Please. I promise they'll be quick. Okay.
Hit me with
4. So the first 3 all tied together. Okay. And the fourth one is a bit more philosophical. The first 3 very practical. Okay. Number 1, we talked about it before. Get yourselves checked. Okay. Go on your next shower. Go know your body a bit better. Check yourself out. If something is a bit suspicious, don't hesitate. Just go see your doctor, right? It's not a big deal to ask for help. Number 2, encourage the other men in your life to go and get themselves checked out, right? Or if there are females who are, listening to this podcast, encourage your brother, encourage your husband, encourage your father, whomever, check yourself out, be proactive. The third one, it's another check in on each other, right? Check in on your brother, check in on your whomever, your best friend, the other men in your life, see how they're doing mentally. Right, we're all going through something. We're all, battling some kind of inner demon or challenge or obstacle, and feeling that support, I think, goes a long way. So those are the 3 practical ones. Check, check, check. Okay. The fourth one, and it's a bit more philosophical, and it's something that it's a mantra or something that I've always, sort of brought into my life. I even have a tattoo of it, which predates cancer. Is it's a quote or a philosophy, I guess, that was initially coined by Viktor Frankl, and I know you're a fan of him, right? I think I listened to one of your podcasts where you brought him up, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm just gonna reinforce that one, right? And my favorite quote of his that I think exemplifies what he was all about is the fact that, and I'm gonna probably butcher it. It's not exactly correct, but in between stimulus and response, there is a space, right? In that space lies our freedom to choose. And in that choice is our growth, right? That's our growth and our freedom. And I think it's just such an amazing quote, and it's totally true. We talked about it earlier, right? Sometimes you don't have any control over the cards that are dealt to you. by life, right? I didn't have any choice in terms of, getting dealt this cancer card. But what you do have some freedom, and even if you don't feel like you have any of that freedom, you have a choice in how you respond to it, right? How you process it mentally, how you kind of come back to that problem, and how you deal with it. Everything in life is, it sounds really cliche, but everything in life is an opportunity to grow from, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm on this podcast, right? That's why I'm now a Movember ambassador, why I wrote a blog about what I went through. This was a terrible curveball that life threw me at one of the most inopportune moments. But now I get the chance to make some good from it, right? To tell to get other guys to be more proactive about their health, and to get more guys to be more vulnerable, to talk about these types of things, right? So I hope that I can, use that stimulus, create a more positive response, and that some good comes from all of it.
I love it, man. I'm a huge fan of Viktor Frankl, and you're right. I love his book. I mean, he's written several pieces, but the Man's Search for Meaning is incredible.
Oh.
So, yeah, changed my life, and I know it's been very profound for you as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's that is something we talk about a lot here on the Dad Nation podcast. Is how do you take that trash and turn it into treasure? How do you flip the script? And that's really what you're doing, man. Is you're taking that thing that could have been so catastrophic, and you're learning from it, and you're using it now as fuel to help implement change in other people's lives. And my listeners would have heard my story and the story of countless other men that I've had on the show. But at the end of the day, you can take some kind of adversity that you face, and you could see it as a setback, or you could choose to use it as a setup, and that's exactly what you have done. And so I just commend you for that, man. I just got one last question for you, and I ask every guest on the show this question, and I have a feeling that you have thought about this before, and if not, either way, I think it's a powerful question, especially for you, given the adversity that you faced and the uncertainty. But for me, my turning point was when I was at a funeral, and I was faced with sort of the future that I was headed into, and faced with the mortality of this man, this funeral that I was singing at. And so I think it's a powerful, question is powerful, because the more we think about the end of our life, or the more we're faced with our mortality, the more it informs us on how we ought to live in the present. Okay, so I want you to picture for a moment, you pass away, and then there's a memorial service happening, and Joe, your beautiful wife, is there, and everyone leaves, and now she's maybe sitting with her family around the table. And they're talking about Sean, and she's talking about her husband. Maybe it's Joe sitting with us, and you have the opportunity to be a bit of a fly on the wall and kind of overhear the things that your wife is saying about the man you were, the things that you've done, and reflecting on your legacy. Another thing we talk a lot about. What are one or two things that you would hope that she would say about the man you were, the husband you were, while you were here with us?
Whew, big question. By the way, I love the sort of lead into that, in terms of, contemplating your mortality and making that think about how you should be living your life in the present, right? I think, I don't know if you've heard this phrase. I think it's in Latin, memento mori, right?
Yes.
Remember, you're going to die.
Yep.
Super important, right? I love that. Like, it sounds very morbid, but I think contemplating the fact that you do have a finite time on this planet means you should live it well, right? So, I think, I hope that there's sort of two things that people would say about me, and I hope that they would say it about me now as well, right? Number one, that I lived life to the fullest, right? So I didn't, not having any regrets, again, sounds maybe a little bit too cliche, but that I, seized every opportunity, that I saw the world, that I didn't say no to too many things. And yes, it's important to say no when you're stretching yourself a little bit too much. But life is short. I've definitely learned that the last year or so, with everything that I've gone through. But seizing the opportunity and living life to the fullest. I hope that people would say that about me. That's more of a, I don't know if that's a selfish one, but the other one I think is just that I don't know, that I made the lives of people around me a bit better, right? By being of service. whether that was in school or in the workplace or at home or in my friendship groups, that, I always stepped up and, tried to make the lives of others better in whatever way I could, with whatever small talents or stupid jokes or, whatever
Fancy
I could
dinners.
muster. Fancy dinners, etc. So, yeah.
I love that, man. I love that. If you're a listener of the Dad Nation podcast, you would have heard me share this before in the past, but I think it's particularly relevant to our conversation today. And one thing I want to leave our listeners with is just this idea that time is the only currency that we spend without knowing the remaining balance. And that's real, and Sean, we've talked a lot about time and the future. We don't know if we have 60 minutes left or 60 years left. And I use that context, or use that to express gratitude for people's time on the show, or gratitude for listeners for listening, to an episode for 1 hour. It's significant. But at the same time, I share it today to sort of instill some urgency in you, if you're listening today, that we truly don't know how much time we have left, and we don't know what kind of adversity is ahead of us. We don't know what that looks like. And so to truly seize a moment, to take ownership, to take accountability for everything in your life, to take the steps you need to take, and listen to Sean's advice to get yourself checked out, and to check in with your brothers, check in with the mental health piece, and to really make the most of this time that we do have. That's not guaranteed. And so, Sean, thank you, brother-in-law. Thank you so much for your time today, man. It's been a powerful conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me take over your amazing platform here to spread a message that I think is a really important one during the month of Movember. To really just encourage the men out there to be more proactive with their health. I know it's not easy. I know it doesn't come natural, but I'm living proof, I guess, of the fact that it's an important topic, and one that we shouldn't ignore.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so if you're listening, I'm going to put all the links to the things we mentioned. So Sean's blog in the show notes, the link to the Movember Foundation in the show notes below. So if you're listening, you want to learn more, please hit the links and take the steps you need to take. That's all for us today. So Sean, again, thank you for having this conversation with me today. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Dad Nation podcast today. Listen, if today's conversation challenged you, if it encouraged you or helped you level up in any area of your life, would you do me a favor? Take 60 seconds to rate and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. This helps us reach more men who need to hear this message. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Dad Nation YouTube channel, where you're going to find full episodes, clips, and exclusive content designed to help you win at home just like you do at work. All right, remember, your family does not need perfection. They need your presence. Your leadership matters. So keep showing up, keep leveling up, and never forget, when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. We'll see you next time.